Hi, this is Stacy Bauman, and I am going to be talking about different types of standardized tests. The three types of standardized tests that I wrote down that I am using for purposes of this video. The first one are Ages and Stages Questionnaires, 3rd edition, also known as the ASQ3. Its purpose is to measure cognitive, language, motor, and social development. It's used from ages 4 months to 60 months. It can be self-administered by parents and caregivers. This is a quick look screening to see how well children are progressing in important areas such as communication, motor skills, social skills, problem-solving skills. This test, the ASQ3, is considered to have high validity and reliability. It has been proven by extensive research. Because this is a screening tool to be used prior to seeking further diagnosis by a clinician or a doctor, I believe there's little risk, so to speak, in the possible bias that would result from a partial person administering it, such as a mom. You know, since this test is able to be administered by parents or caregivers, I mean, I think possibly both could have bias since they're not objective. The second test that I looked a little further into was the Early Screening Project, or the ESP. I received this information from esp.ori.org. It is to be used for ages 3 to 6 years old. It proactively screens and identifies 3 to 5 year olds who are having trouble adjusting to preschool, both by internalizing and externalizing their behavior. Early intervention for those at risk. This is an early intervention for those at risk for emotional problems, speech and language difficulties, ADHD, and possibly more. It consists of 3 increasingly refined, it says, stages of assessment, starts with teacher rankings and ratings, and progresses to direct observation of the child's behavior. What it did not say was who would be directly observing the child, whether it would be the teacher, an administrator, or an objective clinician that would be called in from the outside. It does assess both the intensity and frequency of adjustment problems. The reliability and validity are judged high by independent research using a large norm population throughout the United States. My third test was the Battelle Developmental Inventory 2nd edition, or the BDI-2, and it is an individually administered comprehensive developmental assessment for ages birth through 8 years old. The BDI-2 measures key developmental skills in the areas of adaptive, personal, social, communication, motor, and cognitive. It's used to measure developmental progress of young children. Teachers and clinicians may administer this test. This test is an update of the original from 1984, therefore it has been around for quite some time. This test was based on the belief that children develop skills sequentially from simple to complex. It's used for and aligned to the Head Start programs as well as the OSEP early childhood outcomes. Accommodations and modifications are available for infants as well as for children with disabilities and special needs. The retest reliability and inter-rater reliability were both high, coming in between 90% and 99%. This test, the BDI-2, was the one that I was able to find the most information on as far as specifying what they were basing their reliability and validity on. The other ones were just saying they were high, that they were based upon extensive research, but I couldn't find what research or any other descriptions of said research. How this connects to information I already knew. I knew that there were lots of, I didn't know actually. I knew that there were standardized tests, but my thoughts of standardized tests were, you know, FCAT, SAT, ACT, PSAT, the ones that I took, I think even the ADVAB, the pre-military aptitude test that I don't know if they still do, but that we took in high school. No, I'm sorry, not ADVAB, ASVAB. But what was new information to me was how many types of standardized tests there are and how many uses there are for all of these tests. I previously only thought of, you say standardized tests, I think of FCAT, and it had a negative connotation for me. But now I know that these, the FCATs, the SATs, the ACTs, are group achievement tests used to measure individual and group achievements, as well as program effectiveness, which is linked to the ever mentioned and talked about accountability of teachers and schools. But there are many types of standardized tests and uses for them that are used to assess a child in order to get them early intervention and programs and services that will help students succeed. So I guess my somewhat negative view of standardized tests has changed due to this new information. I definitely no longer will think of just FCAT. There are actual other purposes and good purposes for these tests to exist. Let's see, validity and reliability. Validity is defined as the degree to which the test serves the purpose for which it is intended to be used. So, in other words, did it measure what it set out to measure? Did it achieve its objective? Reliability is defined as the extent to which a test is stable or consistent, or its level of discrimination. So if we administer this test to, say, 350 children on day one, is the reliability or is the likelihood that the same test score will be achieved if we try again 30 or 45 days later? If that concurrence or that number is close, if it's 90% to 99%, which the BDS-2 was in reliability, then you could say that this is a reliable test and that the level of discrimination is low. Both validity and reliability are important in determining test quality. Factors that can affect test quality are a lack of consistency in test instructions. Were they given clearly? Were they given at all? The testing environment, was it freezing? Was it too hot? Was it very disruptive? Were there bells going off and people coming in and out? The students' condition. Did they eat? Did they sleep last night? Are they ill? Are their parents in the middle of a divorce? Are they trying to process some type of trauma? Is this, obviously this might affect whether or not the student is giving their 100% to this test and how true the score will be. We also have two types of testing. We have norm referenced and criterion referenced, and the norm referenced tests our children's test results are compared against the results of a norm group or a reference group. The criterion reference tests are an objective description of mastery for each item. So the student either displays mastery or not. There is no comparison to others. So a norm would be, I think, a scale, like out of 100 children, how did this child score in comparison to others? And then that would have to do with their score. How did it stack up? How did it compare? Whereas a criterion is just, do they have this skill or not? There is no comparison to whether other children have this skill or anything like that. The best tests for young children are those that take into account their developmental limitations. For example, young children have very short attention spans, limited fine motor skills, inability to use reading skills for test responses, and poor performance in group tests. My challenge would be that we still have a standard error of measurement despite all efforts to the contrary. These affect test reliability, sample size, test length, range of test scores. Also, variables in quality of test instructions, testing environment, student prep, students' quality of sleep, that I mentioned before, and also the variable of the individuals who are grading or reading the essay portion of these tests, if there happens to be one. It seems as if these variables are almost impossible to control or eliminate because humans are imperfect and life is life. But I still feel standardized tests are somewhat unfair in their overuse, especially in the later grades. So while I feel that standardized tests, and I have, like I mentioned before, learned now that in younger children, they are, I think, a wonderful tool in identifying those who need early intervention and extra help, and therefore getting them those services and accommodations. I think perhaps in later grades and older children that they may be overused, and that these variables that I just talked about do exist, and I think sometimes are more so with older children. And should a child be held back or not graduate from high school based on a standardized test? I think no. I don't think they should. These tests are good and useful when used as one of many tools and not the only tool.